Are you addicted? We can throw that word around pretty easily nowadays. Oh, you're addicted to chocolate, so you're a chocoholic. Or you must be adrenaline junkie if you're into extreme sports so much. But when there really is an addictive behaviour affecting you or someone you love, it's not helpful to flip things off under a generic banner of addiction. In this video, we're going to take a look at what addiction is and isn't. And I'm going to show you a tool I've tweaked called the spectrum of addiction and how it can give us some great insight into addiction and your current situation. When we look at the process of addiction and change in Carlo DiClemente's book, the first stage is pre-contemplation. This basically means that a person is at least 6 months off considering any kind of change to their addictive behaviour. But the fact that you're even looking at this video means that you may be at the contemplation stage. This shows that you have an openness to considering the impact of your using and behaviour. It could be that you're moving towards preparation or even action, but be kind to yourself and take the time you need. Admitting that there is a problem can be a confronting task, but also a bit of a relief. It takes courage and vulnerability, which can scare the crap out of us. That's why it can be good to have some support as you move through these stages of change. So before we discuss some ideas about addiction, let's just take a few moments to determine where we sit on the addiction spectrum. You can also click below to take an addiction assessment I developed to help you see the stage you're at. This could really help you move to the next phase in addressing any addictive behaviours that you have going on. What looks like an addiction for one person can be different for another. It's about how you're uniquely wired and the kinds of behaviours you may be doing compulsively. This assessment will help you identify if any addictive behaviours are a problem for you. At the end, you'll be given some options for how you can help yourself. So let's take a quick look at the different points along the unhooked addiction spectrum. The first stage on the addiction spectrum is little or no use. This means that substance use and other types of addictive behaviours don't present as a problem for you. This could be because you've made a decision not to use or you don't have the opportunity to use. It may be that you can have a drink out, but you don't drink to the point of intoxication. Not everyone is able to experience this kind of result, and it means that you may be wired differently from those who do struggle with addictive behaviours. This doesn't mean that those people are weaker than you, it just means that they're wired in a different way. Stage 2 is experimentation. This means you're trying substances or behaviours for the first few times. This initial stage is often characterised by curiosity, peer pressure, or a desire to escape negative emotions or stress. It's important to know that not everyone who experiments will end up on the higher end of the addiction spectrum. However, repeated use of these substances or behaviours can lead to more serious addiction. At this stage, you're probably managing your behaviours well enough. But if you're feeling yourself beginning to struggle with your behaviours, it's worth seeking out some kind of professional help. Intoxication is stage 3, and during this stage you will be experiencing a high or pleasurable sensation which reinforces the desire to continue using the substance or engage in the behaviour. You can experience euphoria followed by a decline in mood and cognitive function, which can lead to impaired judgment, risky behaviour and negative consequences relationally, financially, etc. Many different paths can come from this stage. Some people can discontinue their using and minimise the harmful effects, recognising that a little is enough and too much is uncomfortable. For others, they may get hooked and find their use to their liking, and the beginnings of a relationship to the addictive behaviour sets in. Again, if you're finding you're being drawn further into using, then it could be a good time to seek some support and rethink your behaviours. We move to the second half of the spectrum and look at misuse, where your addictive behaviours are now serving a purpose or meeting a need. Use at this stage can be infrequent, episodic, like binging or longer gaps between use, but it also means that continued engagement in the behaviours is now bringing negative consequences such as physical or mental health problems, financial difficulties, or relationship issues. Also, you could now be having cravings and tolerance and withdrawal symptoms, which can make it really difficult to quit. It is necessary to seek some professional help at this stage, as self-management has often reached its limits. The second last stage on the spectrum is abuse. This is characterised by a pattern of substance use or behaviours that's consistently harmful and can put you at risk of negative consequences. You've established a neurological and emotional connection to the substance or activity of your choice. Your preference is now to relieve your stress and pain through external chemical or behavioural comfort. It's not uncommon for people at this stage to still be unaware of the depth of the effect of their using. Finding support from a professional is essential at this stage. The final point on the addiction spectrum is substance use disorder. This stage is the most severe and means that you have a chronic and compulsive pattern of substance use or behaviour that interferes with your daily life. You are experiencing a loss of control over your usage as well as continued use despite serious negative consequences. Your using will be affecting every area of your life, including relationships, work, finances, and physical and mental health. You're at the stage where serious help and support are required, and considering a rehabilitation program may be the best option. But firstly, get some professional support to give you the best help for where you're at right now. So, where do you land on the addiction spectrum? If you haven't taken it already, download the addiction assessment and work out your next steps and what they might be. Oliver J. Morgan in his book writes, "Addiction has many faces. It's a great chameleon driven by invisible forces. It disguises itself by hiding in plain sight. In one corner are the attachments to alcohol, nicotine, opioids, and other drugs we know so much about. In another are the behavioural compulsions such as gambling, online gaming, disordered eating, and sexual excess." Addiction is not just about demon drugs, brain chemicals, and faulty neurons. Addiction is also about adaptive solutions and attempts to cope with adversity, trauma, and toxic stress. What does addiction mean though? And how does it affect our brains? In simple terms, addiction affects our brain's reward system. This system releases feel-good chemicals like dopamine in response to pleasurable activities. However, addictive substances and behaviours can hijack this system, altering our brain's chemistry and making it harder to feel pleasure from other everyday type activities. Whether it's alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, porn, or even gambling, the mechanism remains the same. The repeated use of these substances or engagement in these behaviours has a profound effect on us, making it challenging to stop despite the negative consequences. Numerous theories try to explain addiction, like the disease model, the moral or choice model, or the learned behaviour model. However, they may not adequately address the root causes of addiction. The disease model is one version I did hold on to for a while. It argues that addiction is a chronic, often relapsing brain disease that causes compulsive substance seeking and use, despite harmful consequences to the individual and others. This model asserts that changes in the brain structure and function caused by repeated drug use can persist long after substance use stops, making recovery a continual, lifelong process. This approach can feel fatalistic and that you're stuck with the label for the rest of your life. Maya Salovitz, in her book Unbroken Brain, also challenges traditional understandings of addiction as a disease. She views it as a learning disorder, influenced by social and environmental factors, a maladaptive response to stress and trauma. The moral model of addiction holds that substance use and addiction are the result of a moral failing or ethical weakness in the individual. This theory suggests that individuals have complete control over their choices and should be held fully responsible for their addictive behaviours, implying that overcoming addiction is simply a matter of stronger willpower and moral rectitude. I find this view far too shaming and more than unhelpful for people who are in addictive cycles. This is why telling someone to just stop doesn't work. The idea of tough love is a damaging approach. As psychiatrist Daniel Amen, author of many books including The Brain in Love, states, "Be cautious with tough love, as it works for people whose brains work right, but for people who have brains that are struggling, tough love is like smashing your computer when it has a problem. It can cause lasting damage." The learned behaviour model of addiction suggests that addictive behaviours are learned responses to certain triggers, emotions or thoughts, which can be unlearned or retrained through cognitive behavioural strategies. It emphasises the role of negative thought patterns and maladaptive behaviours, suggesting that individuals can change their addictive behaviours by learning healthier coping strategies and challenging negative thought patterns. While I think that learned behaviour model has some merit, it is a very individualised approach that does not take into account the role of relationships and connection in our addiction and also recovery. It's like we've actually developed a relationship with our addiction. The substance or behaviour becomes a constant companion who we can fall in love with and don't want to be separated from. And if someone tells us to stop what we're doing, it can feel like we're being asked to break up. We've formed an attachment to it, and our addiction has become a substitute relationship. As a side note, this does help explain why partners can have the same emotions to their addicted partner as if the using partner has had an affair. There is an emotional bond to their partner's using, and it can feel like that they are being cheated on and another is being chosen over them. It's a big reason why I work with couples when one of them has addictive behaviours. Attachment theory suggests that our early relationships shape our future relationships and behaviours. When there's disruption or insecurity in these early attachments, we may develop coping mechanisms that lead to addiction. Addiction can be seen as a manifestation of unmet emotional needs. Any recovery support needs to address these underlying attachment issues, helping individuals develop more secure attachment patterns and healthier coping strategies to have meaningful relational connections. This reiterates what I talked about in my last video. The opposite to addiction is not sobriety, the opposite to addiction is connection. Recovery has to address the way we've learned to attach and teach us to develop meaningful ways of connection. But remember, recovery is not a distant goal. It's an ongoing process and a quest for a better life. It can be made smoother with attachment-sensitive counselling. This approach focuses on addressing the root causes of addiction rather than just managing the symptoms. It can help individuals and couples build healthier relationships and coping mechanisms. It's how we approach recovery at Unhooked. Before you go, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'll be working to bring you more videos around the area of addiction recovery for individuals and couples every 2 to 3 weeks. Also, you'll find links to the different resources I refer to during my video in the description below. And if you'd like to find out more about me and my work, you can go to my website at unhooked.com.au.